Welcome to this third talk today on the second track, and welcome to Chrissy Wainwright from 6 Feet Up, who is here to talk to us about creating an impactful homepage that your editors will love. Thank you, Chrissy.
All right, so are you seeing my slides? Assuming you are. So I'm going to talk about making sure the home pages that you as a developer build for your clients, for the editors that are using the site, are easy for your site editors to manage. So I want to put a disclaimer here first. I am not a designer. I'm not going to talk about design or what makes good design, but I'm going to talk about how to take what you have from a designer or a pre-made theme, set it up in your Plone site using these following options, using a DIAZO template, a browser view template, a content type that also has a template, and then using Mosaic. I'll point out Volta will also work with a couple of these options, but Volta also offers its own options, and I'm not going to talk about those today. I'm just going to talk about in classic Plone. So as you're building a homepage, you want to make sure that you remember search engine optimization techniques as you're setting it up. So no matter which, if you're using a DIAZO template or a browser view, all of these are going to apply for that. So the homepage should be regularly updated. So this can be done by dynamically displaying news items, blog posts, upcoming events, as they're added to your site. Make sure that you're including your keywords everywhere. They should appear naturally in the copy that applies to your target demographic. They should be in the H1, and even the logo on your site could have keywords in it. This was a new one that I learned looking into this. You also need to make sure to name the file name with dashes instead of underscores because Google won't read the underscores. You need to make sure to build a good site structure for the navigation. Keep it simple. Keep the main sections of your site at the root. Now, the most important thing is speed. This can be accomplished with caching, can help out quite a bit. Also with your site, make sure you're not doing any crazy queries that are going to slow things down. But I'll point out with that caching can make a huge difference. So like if you go look at the Plone conference website and look at the schedule, for you, it's going to load really quick, less than a second. But that page is built with Mosaic, and each box is doing a query. So if you're an editor and you're logged in, that actually takes 30 seconds to load. So caching was like absolutely necessary there. Also, reducing the number of requests on your homepage is good for SEO, as well as optimizing images and videos. Remove any media if you don't actually need it on the site. Try to keep everything as small as possible. Load only the tools and third-party elements that you need, and use a CDN. Other tips would be making sure you have alt text on your images and videos, which of course is necessary for accessibility throughout the entire site. And also responsive design. The site should be mobile friendly, also work on desktop and everywhere in between. So the first option I'm going to talk about is creating a DIAZO template. So for the Python WebConf site for this past year, we had grabbed a static theme from ThemeForest and started with that. So as you scroll down this page, all of this content that was available on the site was all static, including a copy of the schedule, which was extra work to maintain. For your editors, editing this template is going to look like this. It's just a through the web code editor with raw HTML. So the pros and cons of the DIAZO template method. The pros that it can be edited through the web. It's very flexible in what can display because you're putting in whatever HTML you want to display in there. But there are several cons. One, it requires someone comfortable with HTML to be able to update this page. It may require a code release depending on what your workflow is if you keep all of your code in the file system. And this doesn't offer a templating language, so you're a bit limited in the HTML without setting up a bunch of DIAZO rules, which can possibly get complex. So you may ask, why did we use this method for the Python web conference site? Well, initially we had very limited time in setting it up. And so after purchasing and downloading a theme from ThemeForest, we really just wanted to tweak some of the homepage content to start with a single page site. While the theme was created on the file system, a copy was made in the theming control panel for changes to be made through the web. It's not our standard practice at 6 Feet Up to make a lot of changes through the web, and the theme was moved back into the file system for the 2021 site. And we actually ended up moving that to a browser view instead of a DIAZO template. So when would this method be useful? If your editors are good with HTML and are fine with working on that on their own, especially if they don't know how to work with version control or doing code releases. But if they are comfortable with those things, I recommend going with a browser view instead of a DIAZO template. So next, let's look at the browser view method. So here is the Purdue College of Engineering's current site. This is actually still a ZOAP site right now, but we're working on recreating it in Plone, and it's going to look exactly the same. So for Purdue, we created a browser view with many of these sections that you see are being editable in different parts of Plone. Some of them are also just part of the template, like the events that you can see there. There's nothing for the editors on the home page to change for this other than adding events into the site. So here's what some of these areas of that homepage look like for the editors to manage. At the top is a hero banner. You can see in the top right corner, editors see an edit link when they are logged in. And when they click on that, it takes them to a news management control panel. Now, this was a specific request of the client to be able to manage the banners this way. So this actually manages 6 banners between the homepage and the news landing. And this is using a relation field widget so that the editors can select a specific news item in the site and then drag and drop them in this field to determine exactly which banner slot it's going to appear in. There's also a carousel full of images, and that's managed by randomly pulling these statistics images out of a folder. The folder has a custom view on it to allow a weight to be added to the images so that they can determine, which stats will appear at the top of the list more often. And then another piece that we did was a message from the dean, and that's just pulling from a page within the Plone site. So the pros for a browser view, there's less of a chance of the layout getting broken, instead of your editors just going in and managing the HTML on their own. I'll say that depends on the code, just because you want to make sure that you put in the proper conditions so that nothing actually breaks. It's also easy to connect to a view class with custom programming to be able to set up whatever you want on the page. It's very flexible in what it can display because, once again, you're managing the HTML. And pieces of it can still be edited through the web or in the template. It's however you want to set it up. Now, the cons that for those sections that aren't managed through the web, it'll require a tech-savvy person to make some of those updates and possibly do a code release. And one downside I don't necessarily like to this method is that the sections are not all editable in the same place. Like you saw, banners were done in one place, the carousel was done in another place. So my cautions and suggestions, one I mentioned is including conditions in the template. So like if that page for the dean's message gets deleted in the site, we don't want to see a big error message on the homepage. And then also make it easy for your editors to know where to go to edit everything. Having that edit link that only they see is very helpful for that. So why was this method used for this particular site? So we want all of the sections in the layout to always display and keep the styling that they have. You know, there wasn't going to be much flexibility that was going to happen there. And many of the sections also dynamically update themselves, like the news. There was also a social media widget that was pulling from different places. This method is useful when you need to throw a template together quickly and don't necessarily need everything to be editable. It's nice that you can start with a browser view where nothing is editable on the site and slowly put in all those pieces together as you need them. All right, next I'm going to talk about a content type option. This would use as a custom content dexterity content type with a template. So this page for Sandia, we actually created the home page two ways. And the first way was this content type. So each section that you see here has a tab on the edit form to be able to update all of this content that you see. We also set it up so that each section can be disabled if one of them doesn't need to display. So here's what the editors see. For example, the capabilities section, the edit on screenshot that you see on the right, there is a capabilities tab for that. At the top is a checkbox to determine whether it is displayed or not. And then there are a series of fields for each column. We have it set up so that anywhere between 1 and 4 columns can be set up. So there are 4 sets of fields to be able to manage this. And if you watched Annette's talk yesterday, she showed this off a little bit. Oh, I think she showed the Mosaic view, which is going to be next. But this is set up similarly. Also for the video section is very similar. And then we also had a section for forms that uses a related items widget to be able to grab easy forms through the site. You may also notice there under the submit buttons, it's very small, but there's an edit this form button. So if the editors want to change any of the fields in those forms, they would click that button and take them to the easy form to do that. So the nice thing about using a content type is that it's very easy for editors. They click the edit button, everything is right there in one place for them to be able to update the content. The template allows for the editable sections and then also still have some that get updated dynamically. But the cons is this may become a single-use content type. I don't have any good reason as to why that's a bad thing. It's just not something I like the idea of is, building this whole content type that only gets used once. Now in the case for Sandia, they have multiple sites that use the same code. So the content type may be used in multiple places. Another con is that the layout isn't flexible at all. The editors can't determine how everything shows up. It's all based on a template. And then the same caution for this one is make sure that the template does have conditions for each piece. So if they don't fill out a field that's not required, you don't get a big error message. So why did we use this method? Initially, we set this up through the web as a proof of concept for the client to try out, and then eventually moved it into the file system. So this method is useful when the editors need a single place to update the homepage content without much flexibility, and when the custom add-on is used in multiple sites. All right, the last option is Mosaic, and hey, it's that Sandia site again. Like I mentioned, we did set up 2 different ways of creating home pages. So there's the content type, and then we can also, the editors can do this in Mosaic. And this was due to the fact that since they have multiple Plone sites that are using the same code, but each site has different editors, each of those editors had different needs. And some want to be able to do whatever they want with this home page, and some just want that template. So for this Mosaic version, each section has its own tile. We created a tile for each of these. They can be added in whatever order they want, or they can even be duplicated with different content each time. So here's what the editing interface looks like, and it looks a lot like the content type, except in this case, you're using the Mosaic editor to insert and click and drag the boxes where you want them. When we did this, we were also able to improve upon what was done with the content type and made some of those same changes back to the to the content type as well. So here's what it looks like on the insert menu. You can see on the far left, there is a custom column there called homepage, and these are all of the custom tiles that we made. So there's that banner image that appears at the top. The capabilities section that we looked at, we called that call out boxes. There's another one for call out images because one uses icons, one uses images. Your forms, an iframe like for Google Maps, or anything else you want to display in an iframe, just a freeform rich text area, and then also a video embed, which is a copy of the embed from the media column there that comes default in Plone. Now, we also used Mosaic on Purdue's landing pages. So they have a lot of these sections in their site with custom landing pages that use similar elements. And so we created Mosaic tiles for each of these sections that can be reused and customized for each landing page. The pros for Mosaic is that it is easy for editors. Once again, everything is in one place. They click the edit button and they can see everything there. Also, it is a super flexible layout as opposed to all of the other options that we've looked at so far. The cons that I've run into is that it's not as foolproof as a content type. Especially, you're giving the editors so much flexibility to move things around that it can be easier for them to mess up the layout. It can also cause slower page loads. That's why caching is important. And I've also found it's not as stable because of the JavaScript that's needed for it. So if you run into some issue with the resource registry, that hopefully this will be fixed in Plone 6, that it can cause lots of problems with the Mosaic pages. I think that's a lot of the bugs that we've had to fix in some of the custom Mosaic tiles that we've set up just have to do with JavaScript conflicts and making sure that everything is loading just right. My caution here is be careful not to make it too flexible. You still want to give the editor some parameters so that you don't end up with this bright pink and purple page. So why was this method used? The editors wanted full flexibility of their layouts and had the same type of section on various landing pages throughout the site. So we created the custom tiles for each section that would be used on the site. For Purdue, they had already actually created template blocks in their Zope site, and where they had the editors copy and paste them into their own custom page templates in Zope. And so we took that code and recreated them as Mosaic tiles, giving the editors the ability to customize their block, just using forms on a Mosaic tile instead of having to update the code for that. This method is very useful when your editors don't want to be bound to a specific template layout. This provides the flexibility without editors touching any of the templates. If you want to learn more about this, check out my talk from the Python Web Conference this year. I went more in depth about creating some specific tiles. And then there's also a repository that I put those online. Also going to point out that Plone Mosaic does have some unreleased changes for making it work with Barceloneta LTS. So there will be some nice improvements in Plone 6. So in conclusion, I want to say that the methods I prefer are to use either a browser view or a Mosaic layout. Volto will likely replace Mosaic in the future. And the path needed for a particular site, as far as which option you choose, is primarily going to depend on who is going to be editing the site and knowing what their needs are, how much flexibility is needed, and whether or not the templates and pieces need to be reusable. The important thing here is that you are building this for your editors and making sure it's something that is going to work well for them. So thank you for watching, and I'll be available in Jitsi afterwards.
Thank you, Chrissy. And there is a question in Slido that I see, and since we're early, I will read it to you right now. Mike asks, do you have a Bob template for creating the tiles? Maybe we should add this to Plone CLI, Bob templates Plone.plone.
There is not one, but yeah, actually when I was writing the talk for the Python Web Conference last year, I realized that was something that's a need, I think, that is needed, but I never did get around to actually writing it, and I don't think one exists. But I agree, that would be very helpful.
All right, let's add it to Bob template. Oh, and there's another one. Oh no, that was just a prompt for more questions. I don't see any others. So I will remind everyone that to go to the Jitsi chat room where you can ask more questions. You can ask Chrissy more questions or chat among yourselves about this this presentation. You just scroll down below the video window. In the middle column, there is a watch together and or talk to the speaker, and the blue button join face to face, that will take you to Jitsi. So with that, I will thank Chrissy, and yeah, and I'll see the rest of you back here in, I don't know, 10 minutes or something.
Thank you.
Bye.